here. So we're talking about stimulus. Let me
It's stability.
stability.
It's very
Okay.
important. I mean, it is. There's a huge difference. Stimulus is, if you had an economy that was, in the doldrums, and you want to get it going,
Right.
stimulate it.
Right.
But this is stability. It's melting down, so it's to stabilize the economy until we could pass this virus. I mean, I don't want to sound silly, but it really is it's a stability approach to stabilize things. We're not trying to grow things. We're just trying to keep it from cascading.
Right. And so there's different schools of thought on that. What is your idea on this? What do you want to do right now? How do you want to help Alaskans with the stimulus
Stability.
stability?
I'm sorry. And the reason I say that is up until the moment this virus hit this country and this state, we were doing well. We had this country had the best economy in maybe its history in terms of growth, unemployment, wealth being created. And Alaska had hit record low unemployment, billions of dollars of investment. As a matter of fact, a week before the virus really hit us, AHFC, I was talking to Brian Butcher. He says, we've had we've now had the lowest foreclosure rates in 50 years here in Alaska. Things were really moving in the right direction. So there was no need for a stimulus because things were going in the right direction. And then, bam, we shut things down. We shut down the machine, and so individuals could not get cash. Some of them were losing their jobs. Businesses could not conduct business. So things started to seize up, and they're still seizing up because of the shutdown that we have. We're doing everything we can to, next week we'll start to talk about a plan by which if we meet certain health standards, we can potentially roll things back to get the economy going a little bit, but that'll be contingent upon the health standards. But what we need to do is we need to get cash in the hands of individuals, and we need to get cash into the hands of businesses so that they can pay their bills and move some product and services where they can. Remember, this was not a result of a business plan gone bad. This was not a result of just poor practices in business. Some of these businesses were doing fantastic, and then bam, we shut them down. So we have a responsibility to get cash in their hands so that they can pay their bills, workers and businesses, meet their obligations, workers and businesses, and keep that relationship, if we can, between the worker and the business as long as we can, until we can get through this period of time, which we hope is sooner than later.
So how are you going to make this happen? There's a lot of debate about this. There will be a lot of eyeballs on this interview of people who are unemployed right now working, and they're going to want to know, how is the governor going to help me right now? So how are you going to do that?
So obviously unemployment is an avenue for some folks to go that have already lost their jobs. And we understand that there is a historic rush to apply. We get that. And we're trying to add as many people onto our unemployment application process to be able to process these applications and these requests as quickly as possible. But it's unlike anything the country's ever seen, a total shutdown. So we're working as fast as we can, and we're adding more people to make sure that we process these application claims as quickly as we possibly can. We're also trying to get loans going out through the feds, through SBA, but also we're working through some of our organizations such as ADA to be able to get cash into the hands of businesses so they can stabilize, almost in a way freeze their businesses so it doesn't collapse. And then that way they can continue to keep this relationship with their employees, I should say. The employer and the employee relationship stays intact. Because once we get beyond this, we want to make sure that we have the workers here. We don't want the workers going somewhere else because they've lost their jobs. We're also, through the $1.2 billion in the CARES Act, going to be assisting municipalities and communities because of their loss of revenue as a result of this COVID virus. And any expenses that they may have occurred, we're going to be looking at that as well to try and help them out for standing up some defenses against this virus. So there's going to be funds coming in from all different directions, and we're trying to get those funds earmarked in a manner that's going to help, again, the businesses, the municipalities, and the workers as quickly as possible. But this thing was shut off like that. And the apparatus to be able to get the money to the people that are demanding it in such large numbers, the application processes, et cetera, we're trying to stand up as quickly as possible. And it's not fast enough for me, and it's not fast enough for a lot of folks, so we're working on that daily.
Somebody talked about the PFD. So we got $1,000 this year in PFD. Representative Johnston and Kopp have expressed concerns over what they thought might be two dividends, thinking, okay, we're getting a stimulus from the federal government, and then maybe we need to watch what we do because we don't know what's going to happen after the federal stimulus runs out. So there's debate over this. Can there be agreement? I mean, can you work something out with some lawmakers who are feel differently than you do about dividends?
So, a very good question. Absolutely, when you don't have these unbelievable twin catastrophes hitting Alaska, both the health pandemic and the economic disaster that followed. So, I mean, if this was 3 months ago, we were having those discussions. But what happened now, again, is we need to get cash in the hands of people as quickly as possible and businesses as possible. And so, I understand what some people are looking at, a potential disaster down the road with low oil prices. I get that. But if we don't take care of the disaster that's here in front of us now, that one may be moot. And so, again, when we went from $3,some hundred, the statutory PFD, down to $1,600 last fall, that took $1 billion or so out of the economy. And then we went from $1,600 to $1,000 today. That took several $100 million more out of the economy just when we needed in the economy. So I would say, let's not get hung up on the PFD. Let's not get hung up on a distribution of cash. Let's just realize that the government shut down the economy, and we need to get cash into the hands of people so they can pay their bills, buy products, and partake in services, or we're going to lose a significant amount of our economy potentially if this continues to go the way it's going.
So with all due respect to you and lawmakers, I've heard kind of the same argument on both sides for a long time. Again, I ask, why can't people come together? I mean, usually if I have a conflict with whoever it is, somebody at work or my wife or whatever, we sit down and we talk about it and we figure it out. But it just seems to be impossible in Alaska. It just doesn't happen.
Well, it's a little more
so
complicated.
So what will make it happen, I guess?
It's a little more complicated than you and your wife talking. Because the assumption there, it would be one side me, the other side legislature. But within the legislature, you have two bodies, and within those two bodies, you have multiple caucuses. And so we can come together. There's a statute on the books, and if the legislature wants to change the statute, they have the power to do that if they come together. They have the power to do that if they come together. I happen to believe that the people should be involved, but we're not even at that point. The legislature themselves can't seem to come together around what they want a future PFD to look like. So as a result, what you have are the statutes on the books that have existed for almost 40 years, and then you have just appropriations made that individuals and the different bodies have to vote for. So I've always been open for a discussion about how we get to where some folks want to go, but you're absolutely right. There's people that have different ideas on what the PFD should look like. It is an issue that both unites Alaskans and divides Alaskans. No argument there. We're just saying right now, during these times right now, the playbook's out the window. We haven't seen anything like this. We need cash in the hands of businesses and Alaskans, or it's going to get worse.
So that being said, for the folks who are watching this right now, can you get money to Alaskans and small businesses in, say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
Through the PFD process, we could. We have.
So what would happen to make that happen? What would have to happen?
We would. Well, it's going to be tough because the appropriation was made for after July 1st. It's going to be difficult. If there was a distribution that was agreed upon now, we can get that out in 2 weeks' time. We can get that out fast. So that was really the discussion. And all I would say is that I understand that this has happened quickly. This happened in the middle of a session, to be fair to people. But they're in recess right now. They could go back and they could authorize another distribution. Because keep in mind, if we were to go back and look at the statutory PFD, $3,000 plus should have been distributed. So that money still sits in the earnings reserve and could be used now during this time. I would just say that the consequences of not getting cash in the hands of people and businesses right now may in the end be more devastating to Alaska than spending a little more out of the earnings reserve.
But again, the people on the other side will say we we're going to deplete these savings. We won't have
You got to
anything
deal with
later.
you got to deal with the issue you have at hand now, today.
Okay.
And then we have to work on that issue. There's no doubt about it. But if we don't work on the issue we have today, with people losing their jobs, with record unemployment, I mean, there was a statistic that came out today that we might have 25% of Americans unemployed. That's unprecedented because of this battle against this pandemic. So let's deal with the issue we have in front of us today. Let's try and stabilize the economy for a few months. Then we can have the discussion as to what this Alaskan world is going to look like down the road.
So maybe I don't know all the, kind of backstories and inside baseball of politics I'm learning, but why
You're
can't you
lucky.
just why can't you just sit in a room like we're doing right now with lawmakers on the other side and say, okay, let's not leave this room until we figure something out?
Well, again, you have different branches of government. We put a budget in. We put a flat budget in this year because our budget last year caused folks to have quite a discussion, and some tools we thought were important were left on the table and not discussed, that being an appropriation limit, sending a vote, getting a vote of the people on the PFD, et cetera. So we put in a flat budget so we could, I was hoping we would focus on those other issues. But again, Joe, the issue this year, again, is internal to the legislature, internal to each body and the caucuses within those bodies. They come together. They're the most powerful branch of government by far. They come together. They can make anything happen. So that's really a question. I would hope you would do a follow-up interview with legislators and ask them that question.
I just think that a lot of people out there, again, no matter what side you're on, get frustrated, or they're beyond frustrated that
I'm
things
frustrated.
aren't moving fast enough, and so-and-so did this and so-and-so said that. Meanwhile, things don't happen, and this continues on with hairdressers and nail technicians who've lost their jobs, and they got to pay their rent at their shops, and it just seems like nobody's sitting down and saying, let's figure this out, let's get it done, period. I don't care what our differences are. That's kind of what we hear out there.
Well, again, we introduced the budget with a full PFD and payback. Imagine for a moment if that was voted on and passed by the legislature. Mm-hmm. We could then expedite if there was if that expenditure was allowed, if we allowed that expenditure to take place in this fiscal year through a supplemental, we could expedite that in 2 weeks and get that in the hands of people at the time they need it. That's all I'm saying, is that this crisis is happening now. Mm-hmm. It's not going to wait for us to decide what we're going to do 4 months from now. It's on its own time, its own schedule, this virus is, and this issue we're dealing with now with the economy. So I'm saying let's deal with the issue in front of us now. Mm-hmm. Let's stabilize this economy now. Then we can talk and discuss and argue and squabble here in a few months, but you get 60 members. Mm-hmm. They've got to come together, at least 21 and 11 on each side in the House and in the Senate. They've got to come together first. But we laid out a bill. We wanted the legislature to come up with some ideas because, as you remember, last year we had ideas that a number of people didn't agree with, and members of the legislature panned pretty hard. So we said, fine, work together, legislature. Talk amongst yourselves, come up with some ideas to solve some of these long-standing problems. Mm-hmm. Here we are today.
So again, my question continues
you're asking
to be, I'm just asking what it takes to get you guys together. That's
keep
what
saying
I'm
you
asking.
guys.
I'm
together. My
you're
branch of
leader,
government.
You say, hey, leadership, let's sit
Yes,
down, like I said, in a room and just get it taken care of.
We do. My branch of government is together.
Okay.
The legislature, by design, the Founding Fathers designed it to diffuse power and not necessarily get business done bang, 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 because the Founding Fathers, and I'm giving a little deference here to the legislature, the Founding Fathers designed this so that there would be a struggle and a discussion to make sure that our freedoms and our wallet wasn't taken by a branch of government that would act too harshly or too quickly. Mm-hmm. But I hear what you're saying. We've been arguing about the PFD now for a number of years. My argument has always been follow the law. If you don't like the law, change the law. That's always been my argument. But again, Joe, the issue is internal to the legislature.
Right.
I don't own the legislature.
Right.
I have discussions with them. We submit bills. We sit down and have a conversation with them. But in the end, they have to agree. And what I'm saying now is, hopefully they're seeing what's happening in Alaska. They're in recess right now.
Right.
So the legislature hasn't adjourned. They're in recess and can come back if they so choose, which, I'm sure some of them are talking about this. and come up with another distribution to deal with the issue at hand today.
So let me ask you that question. Do you think the legislature needs to come back in right now and sit down and talk about it?
I think I would hope that the legislature would contemplate how they can help right now, and if that's a quick session to come in and do another distribution, that would benefit Alaska, I think, greatly.
So what do you think solves this? What do you think
Solves
helps?
what?
Solves money in hand to people out of work in Alaska right now.
Again, the federal government moved very quickly. I mean, I haven't seen that outfit move this quick in my lifetime. They recognize the catastrophe that's unfolding. So we're going to work quickly to get some of that money in the hands of our people. The legislature, to their credit, also acted quickly in 63 days to pass a budget, but they left that crucial issue out on how do you get cash directly in the hands of people. There's money in the budget to deal with building up our health care, which we are grateful for. There's millions of dollars in that, and we're working on that. But again, we're kind of stuck with SBA loans. We're going to work through one of our corporations, Ada. We know that the banks are also processing these SBA loans. Those are for businesses. We have unemployment insurance right now for folks that are going to become unemployed and have been unemployed. So we're working at that angle. But again, cash in the hands of your laid-off hairdressers, your laid-off waitresses, your single moms would have helped tremendously. The legislature wants, they can come back in, out of recess, like that, and put in place a distribution for the next 2 weeks, next 3 weeks.
And what do you think you would have to give up for them to
Give up?
do to compromise with the legislature? If they said it's too much out of our savings, we got to do something else.
Again, that's a discussion. That's a discussion they need to have internally because they can make this happen. I'm not in the legislature. They can make this happen now. The leadership could call them back into session out of recess, and say we're going to be looking at a distribution here as quickly as possible to help the people of Alaska. They could say that we went home, we had conversations with businesses, our constituents, and we find that this economic catastrophe is unfolding quicker than most people think. So they could call themselves back, go into session, and come up with the distribution.
Okay.
Joe, we got a few minutes left. Did you want to ask about the?
Yeah, one last thing, Governor, if I could. So I wanted to ask you about this letter that I know that you have seen from the Senate President and Senator Natasha von Imhoff. What is your thought about this letter?
You know,
just and let people know, it's basically they're asking the Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin to look at if what you have done with some of your vetoes and CARES Act money can be done.
Yeah. When we first looked at that, it took us a team to try and understand what was actually being asked. So it's still pretty confusing. But with that said, I talked personally with the Secretary of the Treasury. I talked personally with Russ Vought, who's the OMB director, personally. I spoke personally with Mark Meadows, who's the new Chief of Staff, on this issue. And all indications that I got from those individuals are they understand that the states need as much flexibility as possible to be able to deal with the fallout from this virus. And so they're going to make it work in that we are able to use the money in as flexible a manner as possible. And so, again, that's a difficult letter to figure out what exactly is trying to be, conveyed there or asked there. But nonetheless, we believe in our conversations with these officials in the White House that we can use this money to battle this virus at many levels, including the municipal level, state level, health care systems, you name it. Whatever it takes, the battle is. We believe we have the right to, or the proper authority to do that.
So did you talk directly with Mnuchin yourself?
I spoke directly with the secretary.
Okay.
I spoke directly with the chief of staff. I spoke directly with Russ Vought, who is the OMB director on this issue. Yes.
And did he say that, yes, you can veto this money, and yes, you can use CARES money to fill the void of that
they
money?
have no idea what our veto process is. They could care less about that. Really what it is the question is, can we use the CARES Act to deal with any and all issues involving this virus fallout in the state of Alaska? And the indications we got was yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for addressing that. All right. I appreciate your time.